This week, Matter will not be in time, Epic will not be part of Google, and Messenger will not be stopped from encryption. It's Sunday, August 15th, 2021, and this is episode 601 of F5 Live, Refreshing Technology, a proud part of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. Wherever you are and however you're accessing our show, whether it be on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat, through a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, TuneIn, or a myriad of other options, through our live stream platforms, livestream.com, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, or of course, on our website, PLUGHITZlive.com. Thank you for making us a part of your day. There are two ways that you can do that. The first is you can join us live Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern by going to f5live.tv/join us. There you can chat with us in the studio and give us your feedback on the topics as we talk about them. Or you can always subscribe by going to PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows, including F5 Live, Piltch Point, and a whole lot more. And of course, you can find all of the ways to watch, listen, and follow along. Well, we want to welcome everybody back. We obviously were off last week. We had some personal things to deal with here on my side. Everything's fine. Everything's good. Just trying to get life back to normal for some people around here. But how were you during our downtime, Avram?
All right, not bad. Got some, got some work done as always with got some work done on some projects here. Still got a lot to do. Still got a lot to figure out with my 3D printer. Still trying to get cooler stuff to come out of it. But
Sure.
Did some interesting learning about how to really make the most of your keypad, which we'll talk about later. We had a interesting week or so. Andrew from my staff got to go to Bellevue, Washington, and see the Steam Deck, and I instructed him not to wash his hand again till it comes out. Just, in case that, keep a micromolecule of it with him at all times. But I don't think he listened to me. But anyway, he said it's, it seems pretty good. So that was really interesting. Hoping that we'll get to take a closer look at it before it comes out.
Sure.
Although the most interesting thing that really struck me about it is that it runs Arch Linux. That's its it's SteamOS, which is basically built on top of Linux, and if you plug it into a monitor, keyboard, and mouse, you can run the Arch Linux desktop, which means that it's like Arch Linux, which makes me wonder, could somebody get the Steam OS as it is Linux, put it on and make their own Steam Deck? If they had parts, could they build their own console like that?
I don't think they took down. You used to be able to download SteamOS yourself and do whatever you wanted with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Build your own Steam machine, build and sell Steam machines. Yeah, there's a do-it-yourself Steam machine download. So yeah, if you got like a Windows, like one of the Chinese Windows ones, you could install it on there. If you really had the the gumption to go build a portable computer and put SteamOS on it, you could as well.
I think it's x86 processors only. So at least for the Steam OS, I don't think it supports ARM. So I don't think you could like take a Raspberry Pi or
Correct. Intel
competitor
or AMD 64-bit capable processor.
and do it just yet. Although it would be cool if you could. But that seems to be an emerging market, right? Is these small,
Yeah.
the Steam. There was the Steam Deck, but there's also these, what is it, what's it called, the Win GPD Win
Yep.
box, something, no. And there's also the Alienware had showed a prototype
Yep.
a while back. So
At
I
CES
think
2020.
so I think this is um, it's a market that people want. Like it's a device form factor that people want.
Agreed.
So we will have to see where that goes, but it's something that people want. So it's kind of exciting to see a new PC form factor. Um, and with the excitement around it, I could um, totally see this going somewhere, even though it's very expensive for what you get.
Absolutely. It is just the GPD Win, by the way.
Right. I thought there was another, like, I think there's a second version coming or something.
Well, there's a Win, there's a Win 2, there's a Win Max, there's a Win 3, 5.5. There's a number of units. A win-win?
It is a win-win situation.
It would be a win-win-win. Even you win. Sorry. Office
Yes.
fans. Office fans will appreciate that one for having mediated the situation. Anyway. Oh, it's going to be an interesting show tonight. Just to let everybody know, it's been a very weird long week around here. So I'm a little off. So I'm going to be a little extra goofy tonight. But speaking of goofy, something I know we've said a lot about TikTok, and very little of it has been positive. But if you do already happen to be on TikTok, Aaron Hurst 6 is the 3000 Brigade's Aaron Hurst, and she has apparently been invaded by Linda Belcher from Bob's Burgers. And she's posted several videos as Linda, and I definitely feel like there's more coming. They're very funny. Definitely check it out. I was laughing earlier at her going to Joann Fabrics, which, amazing. But on a more serious note, we have a new feature coming to PLUGHITZ Live in the near future. We're currently calling it, we'll see if it sticks with this name, we're currently calling it the monthly download. Which is to go along with the Upstream, which is our weekly news section. It's going to be a newsletter where what we're going to do is we're going to dive into a topic. For example, we have completely skipped over the topic of Apple and scanning your photos and documents on your device looking for a certain content.
Topic.
We have completely skipped it. Why? Because of what Avram just said. Because it's quite a topic. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a big topic, we're going to dive into it. You'll get the opinions and the takes from our editorial staff, from our hosts, from the people behind the scenes that you don't usually see, plus some of our partners, and including the Tech Podcast Network, Kirk and Todd and Chris Jordan. We'll get takes from them. We're going to include reactions from people in the industry, both good and bad. So we're going to really dive into a topic. It will come out to our subscribers first, and then we'll publish to the website a couple days later. So if you want to get that first, I'm going to give you a little hint. It's not available quite yet, but if you go to plughitslive.com/thedownload, you can sign up for that newsletter in a couple of days. And then hopefully the first edition will be published soon. It's been a fun project to get started on. We've been working with a new marketing company. We've got a lot of new interesting things coming. This is the first. Very excited about it because it's a different direction for us editorially, and I'm pretty excited about that possibility of where it could go. So anyway, that's that's our marketing pitch there for this evening. Definitely go check out Aaron, go check out the download, and with that, let's get down to some news. This week's Nifty Gifties and F5 Live is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you're looking for a new laptop, a tablet, desperately seeking a new Xbox, some new games, or a whole lot more, you can get them at the Microsoft Store, and that's not just Microsoft products, there's a whole lot more. And remember that current students, faculty, parents, and active military can save up to 10% on almost everything. And to browse all the products and to learn more, you can go to f5live.tv/Microsoft. So we talked about this a couple of months ago. It is the new smart home standard coming from what was the Zigbee Alliance, which is now called the Connectivity Standards Alliance. The new standard is called Matter. It was supposed to be here by the end of this year. But matter and time and space apparently do not match. And so the standard has been delayed until at least 2022. Apparently, they're having trouble with their software development kit, their SDK. So that would prevent the manufacturers from developing apps so that you could do, trivial things like turn your lights on, which obviously is a helpful thing if you want to use smart devices. So obviously they're going to be working on that hard. I don't know about you, Avram, but the more I learn about Matter, I've always been on the Z-Wave side of the Z-Wave Zigbee fight, but that's maybe because I know everybody over there. But the whole Matter thing has gained a lot of steam. Not Steam Deck, that's something else, but they've gained... That won't be controllable, but I guess technically you could install apps since it's Linux. Anyway, it's gained a lot of steam with having partners join the alliance like Apple, Google, and Amazon. I mean, that's a pretty big deal, having them involved directly.
Why can't we have one standard to rule them all? It's very frustrating. I mean, will this be backward compatible with
Zigbee?
Z-Wave?
Not with Z-Wave. That's the other
Right.
alliance.
So yeah, I figure
but
it would
with
be backward
Zigbee.
compatible with Zigbee.
Yes.
But it won't be cross compatible with.
As of right now, no.
So you still have to pick a side.
But there are bridges. I've seen bridges that include both, that allow the relay of commands from one protocol to another. Now, I don't know how official they are. I don't know if they're actually allowed to do that. But I have seen things like that, which is an interesting middleman solution for the problem.
So here's I don't know if we know the answer to this, but how expensive is it to build Matter into your device? Is it like free, or do you have to pay licensing?
There's licensing, but it's less expensive than the licensing for Wi-Fi, which is impressive because when talking with Jennifer from Extreme Cables, one of the things she told me was the reason why they went with Wi-Fi on the new version of the Monster Luminescence, like what's behind me, is because Wi-Fi was less expensive than dealing with just standard RF. So these things behind me running Wi-Fi, I think retail for $10 or $12. So if this is less expensive to license and use than even Wi-Fi is, I mean, it could actually bring costs down, which is even more impressive.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's an easy, and I haven't tried to do this with Zigbee. To be fair, if there's an easy way to use to build your own board that can do Zigbee. Could you do it with a Raspberry Pi with some add-on board? Could you do it with an Arduino with some add-on board? Could you do it with an RP2040 board? Um, I guess that's not a mind frame of most people will probably be in. They'll probably be in, hey, which standard do I want to support in my home, and I'm going to get the proper bridge. But I do wonder if which of these is whether this standard is going to be better for people who are trying to kind of do it themselves in building smart home bridges or devices than some of the other standards.
So I can tell you without a doubt that both Zigbee and Z-Wave do have Raspberry Pi and Arduino modules. I have them in a box just outside the studio. So, so yes, both standards do have modules to make it easy. I don't think they're made by the alliances. I think they're made by aftermarket. But that's the wonders of being a member of the alliance, right? You've got the standard. What do you do with it? Whatever you want. So they're off they go, and they're making.
So you could get it, yeah.
Yeah, they're making shields and all that. So absolutely,
Yeah.
I imagine that we'll see the same thing come about when the Matter standard becomes more public than just keeping it in house to the members as they produce their products on it.
Will you be able to use an existing radio for this, or like if you have a Zigbee, can you upgrade it with firmware, or is it completely new hardware?
Fair question, and one I don't have an answer to. I have not researched into that part of it yet, but I do know. I do know that it's something about 802.11 AH is somewhere that Matter lives. It runs somewhere within that protocol, that connectivity.
Right.
And I don't know if that's where Zigbee lives. So, if not, then no. But if it can access those frequencies, maybe. I don't know. But that's an interesting idea, being able to literally upgrade the hardware to the new standard itself.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that. Obviously, from years of CES, I know some people over there, so I will reach out and see if I can get an answer on that, because those are the kinds of things that we love, right? It's not just our audience isn't just consumers. It's obviously the Tom's Hardware audience as well. It's people who are tinkering around with things and want to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's the fun to me, is to figure out, hey, like, is there something I could do with this that would be? I mean, obviously, there's a reason why the companies are using this standard. So this is going to be lower power, presumably, than using Wi-Fi to communicate, right?
Sure. And less than Zigbee.
Right. So you can imagine that something like, okay, I'll give you an example. I have in my drawer here. If I can yank it out. This thing I haven't really got to play with very much, but is a really cool toy. I don't know if I've shown you this before. So this is the mag tag, right? And this is something that Adafruit makes, and it's an e-ink screen, right? And because it's e-ink, it uses no power whatsoever unless it's changing state, except that it has Wi-Fi on it, right? On the principle that it's got to get data from somewhere to change, right? Like if I want to show something, right? So, if this is connected to, whatever my computer or something else via Zigbee, presumably it's using less power from its battery. It can stay a lot longer between charges. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. What was that called?
The mag tag.
It's interesting that it has the
is
word
the
tag in it because we interviewed a company a couple years ago doing something similar to that specifically for price tags.
yes, I know. I think it might have been the same company. Was it Asia?
That could
They
be.
did wireless charging as well. Asia Coda. I mean, they're not. They may not be the only ones, but their Asia was advertising. They do not only do they actually have people distribute the data, but they have how actually wireless charging. And they said, hey, we can have a whole supermarket shelf. They showed a whole supermarket shelf like this
Yeah.
with, you know, with little e-ink displays like this showing the pricing,
Yeah.
right? And so
The
they're able to update the pricing and, dynamically.
the the home section of Home Depot, like the cabinets and flooring and stuff, are all
Yeah.
priced with e-ink displays at my store. I was like,
Yeah,
ooh,
I mean,
exciting to see it out in the
it makes
wild.
it makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So well, you can imagine just little things throughout your home that you could pin up that give you certain pieces of information like that. And how, in the absence of having wireless power, how are you going to power these? Because that
Right.
is the biggest challenge, especially if you've got a store and you've got a million, little, um, a million little, signs. You have to recharge or replace the batteries on these on a regular
Right.
basis. It's going to be annoying. So, it's the same thing at home, but if you can use a lower power, um, the lowest power thing to give data, because I mean, how much data are you really going to send?
Right.
Um, it could be quite useful. And I mean, that's why it's being used for things like lights, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how much data do you really have to send to your light? On, off.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Very little.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. It really is wonderful. I love this idea. Like I said, I've done a pretty deep dive into it. I'm excited about it. I've been on the Z-Wave side for a while, but this Matter standard is pretty exciting. I look forward to seeing what it looks like in real life when it does finally uh, hit the market. Let's cross our fingers next year. This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by VPN. The best way to protect your privacy online is with VPN. You can hide your online activities, say goodbye to some regional restrictions, and improve your streaming quality. Plus, it's available for almost all of your devices, and you can get a special price right now by going to piltchpoint.live/PureVPN. All right, Avram. So, you have an interesting piece from this week that I
Yes.
really enjoyed.
Yes. So thank you for reading that. I know I've talked on some previous shows about how cool it is to kind of to take a something and get your own little macro keypad, like this one that I recently reviewed with Adafruit Macro Pad RP2040. But forget that for a second. A lot of us already have this. We don't need to necessarily buy something. We have a numeric keypad on our keyboards, but most people I talk to don't know what to do with theirs, or rather, they don't use it much. Right? It seems nice, but then unless you're an accountant, you're probably not sitting there keying in numbers like this. You're probably just using the top number row to type in your numbers, and that's fine. And of course, you don't need the arrows too much because you already have arrows, and you don't need the page up, page down because you already have page up, page down. So it feels like a vestigial organ on your keyboard. But what if you could take your numpad and turn it into something else? In fact, you could take any keys on your keyboard and turn them into something else. But I'm going to talk about your numpad because that's something where you can afford to do it without messing up something else you might want to do. Like if you change your F2 key into something else, you might say, hey, wait, I needed that. So there's a couple of
And we
ways that
definitely
you
don't
can
want you to change your F5 key.
Yes, exactly. Right. So, here's something that where you can change it, where you can take the keys on your number pad. That means 10 number keys, the enter key, the plus, the minus, the asterisk, the division key, the del that is a dot key, all of those, and you can transform it. So let me share my screen and show that there's a couple of different ways to do this, each of which has its own special advantages. So over here, I'm going to show this freeware app called Sharp Keys. What does Sharp Keys do? Sharp Keys allows you to take any key on your keyboard and have it remap it to a different key. So, for example, if I want to take the let's say num4 key on my keyboard, um, and I could look for it here in this, like you get two columns here, the from key, the to key. I could go scroll this whole list and look for it, or I could just hit type key and I could type the num4 and it will allow me to get to it. Now, what I want to do is I want to turn this into a music player. Some keyboards have, but mine doesn't. Maybe yours doesn't either. Have media keys. So if you're playing something in Spotify or whatever, or even video, whatever you're playing, you can hit forward, back, and play pause uh, without without having to go into the app and look for that, and hit those buttons. So I want to take num4 and I'm going to turn it into media prev track, right? And I select that, and you see it says here on this list. I'm going to go again, and I'm going to do, for number 5, I'm going to select media play pause. And I'm going to take key 6, which is the forward arrow, and I'm going to make it into media next track. And if I want, I also can take, let's say, the num plus key, and there is, I think it's under media, there's volume up, right? Media volume up. So, and I can take the minus key, and guess what? I'm going to make that media volume down. So I could do all of that, right? And when I'm done, all I need to do is hit right to register, hit this right to registry button. But I'm not going to do this right now because it will interrupt our show. These will not take effect until I reboot. Once I've rebooted, the program will now think that 4, 5, and 6 are reverse, play, pause, and forward, as if they were the media keys. I could also turn these into function keys. I could turn these into there's some other weird keys that I never heard of being on people's keyboards, that they're like, there's an email key and a calculator key. I have no idea what keyboard in the world has those things, but that natively some keyboards have, and so you can remap to it. There are even some special characters on here that you can remap to. Although interestingly, I was looking for a pound sterling sign. I didn't see that on here. So that's one thing you can do, and that's the simplest thing. This does not even require you to run Sharp Keys again. Like, once you've written it to the registry and rebooted it, you can only need to run Sharp Keys if you want to change this. So that's Sharp Keys, but let's talk about something a little bit more ambitious, and that is Auto Hotkey. So Auto Hotkey is something I really recommend, but you gotta invest a little bit of time to learn about it. So Auto Hotkey is a program you install it, and then you create scripts, and the scripts are written in Auto Hotkey's little scripting language, which is really easy to learn. You can edit them in a text editor and save them with the file extension .ahk. And if you save them in your Windows startup folder, they will just run every time you start. So here's my script. And what I'm done here is I am going to make each of these keys do something different. And by the way, the reason you would want auto hotkey over, say, using sharp keys is you can make it do more than just remap to an existing key. You can make it run a program. You can make it type repetitive text. You can even make it go into menus for you. And you also can fix it so that you assign different functions to the number pad when it's in numlock mode and not in numlock mode. So, for example, let's say you like using the number pad for numbers. Okay, you can still assign functions to the keys when numlock is off. So you can have it the best of both worlds. You can have it be a number pad when you want it, and a macro pad when you don't. So what I've done here is there's a few lines of code you always put at the top. This is no big deal. For every key that you want to map to, what you do is you put the name of the key, and there's a bunch of key names. This one is numpad home, which is the 7 key pad, but when numlock is off, it's considered a home key. And if you want to just run an app, you just tell it run and the app name. If it can't just find the app that way, then you may need to put the full path, like C:, and program files. And at the end of whatever you're having a key do, you always put return. So let me show you how this works. I'm going to hit the 7 key, and you're going to see that that's Notepad launched, right? Now, another thing that I assigned here is numpad up, which is the 8 key, and I had it assigned to send some text. So let's say you have something like your address that you're always sending to people, right? I'm going to hit the 8, and there it goes. It puts it in.
Wow.
So now I could have it do something much more complicated than that, but that's just a macro, or that's just text, right? That's the simplest thing in the world. Also, it could be a special character, right? So if, let's say, I'm constantly writing things that are in British pounds, as I actually am doing at work, then and there's no pound key, no pound sterling key on my American keyboard, I can assign one of these keys to be that. Another thing is, and this I think is the most useful thing you can do with AutoHotkey, is what if you had a menu item that you want to access and there's no built-in hotkey for it? So here's an example. And this is not an example you probably use in real life because you probably don't care that much about this function. But in Notepad, if you go to the view menu, there's a status bar option, right? And if you go up and scroll to it with your mouse, you can turn the little status bar at the bottom on and off, right? If this were something that, say, you did a lot, like a good example for me is in Photoshop Elements, I use the crop function a lot, and there's no hotkey for crop. There's no keyboard shortcut for it. So I have to roll my mouse all the way up in Photoshop and scroll down and select crop, and that's work, right? So what you can do is you can create a code to assign a key to do a menu thing for you. So you'll see I'm going to hit 9, and it was so fast you couldn't see it happen, but I'm toggling the status bar on and off with the 9 key, which is also known as the page up, numpad page up. And if you look at my code here, this is very simple. I have assigned, first of all, I put a little line of code up here telling it to only do this in Notepad, if when active Notepad. Because if I hit this key and I'm in Word, I don't want it to work for this, right? Then I'm assigning numpad page up to do the following things. I'm having it send. Now, the exclamation point stands for an Alt key, an Alt V. Then I'm having it hit down, and then I'm having it hit enter. Why all of that stuff? Because in Windows, one thing that some folks may not know is that in Windows, if you want to get to something in one of the menus in any program, one of the top menus, the way to do it, this doesn't really work for ribbon. I don't think you really do this with a ribbon, but with any kind of normal menu like you see in Notepad, if I hit Alt, the Alt key, and then the first letter of the menu that I want, like V for view, it will show me that menu. And then, of course, if I hit the down arrow, I get to the status bar option, and if I hit enter, it turns it on and off. So what have I done with this script? All I've done is I've had it hit those keys for me, but I don't have to actually do. I only have to hit one key to do it, right? And even though it's going through the menu, it's happening so quickly that you don't really see the menu, the little pull down menu pop up. But what's important here is it's doing what I wanted it to do, right? So, like I said, I've used this in other programs like Photoshop. I've used this on particular web pages, like for Google Docs. There is a Google Docs menu option that I want to get to very frequently, and there's no hotkey for it in Google Docs, but I figured out what alt keys to press. Alt, the right combination of alt and arrow keys to get to that menu item and hit enter. And so now I can do that with a single key press. So those are a couple of things you can do. The final thing I want to show you that you can do is something I don't think a lot of people want to do, but hey, it's something you can do. It's called mouse keys. So in the let's see if I can. The best way to do this is if you type mouse keys, you will get this menu here. If you search for mouse keys, and you can turn it on. Although I found that this doesn't, the regular Windows 10 menu doesn't always work for settings menu for mouse keys, and sometimes if you go to the old control panel, that seems to work more consistently. So if you go to the old Windows control panel and you go to ease of access settings, ease of access center there, I believe it's use the computer without a mouse or keyboard, I think it is. No, it is under make. It is one of these options here is mouse keys. Mouse keys. Anyway, point being, if you turn on mouse keys, what you can do is that you can use the arrow keys on your numpad to move the pointer around like a mouse. Would I
Fascinating.
personally do that? Would I personally do that? No, because it can be a little slow. But it is, if you don't have your mouse around, that's a use case for it. There certainly have been times when I would have wanted to do that when I was working on some other thing where I had like a Raspberry Pi or something. I would have liked to do that with it, but I don't know how to do that in Linux. But anyway, so you could turn the numpad into like a joystick, basically, and move your pointer around that way. And you can actually, you can hit, I think you hit the zero key to click. And you hit them, and if you hit the division key, the slash, it'll turn into a right click mode, so you can change between right and left click, and you can move around. But I found, it is working for me. Okay, see, I'm moving it right now. And if you hold control down, it speeds it up. So holding control down, it moves a little faster. If I want to hold shift down, it moves a little slower. And you can control the pointer speed. So it does usually work in the new Windows settings, but if you go to the old control panel, I found that, like most things, the old control panel is still better than the settings menu. The diagonals work too. So if you use like the 1, 3, 7, or 9, you can move diagonally. So that's the, it's something you can do. It's supposed to be helpful for people who have trouble moving the mouse. So for those folks, it's definitely a great thing. For folks who can use a mouse comfortably, I'm not sure. I don't think it's a real performance enhancer to do this. So, because I think it's probably kind of takes longer to move around. But anyway, so those are all the different things that you can do, and really the possibilities are kind of endless because if you really get into using auto hotkey, which, by the way, is not at all limited to using your numpad. You could assign all kinds of key combinations on auto hotkey. So if you want to, for example, assign Control Shift K to do one of the things that I just said, you can assign that too. So auto hotkey is not only for a single key, assigning something to a single key, you can assign something to, a key combination. So, Control Alt a key, Control Shift a key, Control Windows Shift, whatever, plus a key. So you can, you don't, even if you don't have a numpad, you can benefit from auto hotkey a great deal. But I'm just talking about the numpad because that's, for a lot of people, that's unused space.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that I've been using. Like the keyboard that's here in the studio has 18 additional keys on it, specifically for that kind of thing, right? Plus, I've got a keypad off to the side, and I've got the Stream Deck, which is different than the Steam Deck, here under the desk, which is actually how I control most of the show. So yeah, the idea of like having additional hotkeys and stuff is obviously big on my agenda.
Right. I mean, I think about all the time that I would love to get a keyboard that has extra function keys. I mean, they used to have, it's rare, but they, back in the day, you used to have keyboards that had F13 through F24.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's, now you can sort of get, there's like, I know one place we can get a new keyboard that has that, but that's very, very rare. And you think about it, because all the other keys on your keyboard are kind of spoken for. If they're not spoken for in Windows, there's probably some other program that's using them, right? So, but your numpad keys, those you really could, are really free keys. So, that could be like another, 14, 15 keys that you can assign to do other things if you want. So, that's, you have another 18 function keys. Now you have another 14 on top of that if you want to use your numpad as function keys.
Ironically, the Stream Deck that I have here is currently set to replicate the number keys on the number pad. because that's how a lot of the controls in Livestream Studio are implemented is through the number keys. But yeah, obviously under most circumstances, most people are not using that keypad on the right. I do have one question. When you were showing off the essentially macroed menu item, if it was, let's say, obviously we all know you can Control S, but let's pretend that didn't exist. Could you also send Alt FS and have it do the menu that way too? Okay, I figured as much, but I had to verify.
Yeah, of course. Anything like that.
Okay.
Any key that you could type on the keyboard, you could send this way, right?
Okay.
Also, you could set delays, right? So I didn't set any delays because this worked without it. But for something on a web menu where you're hitting a menu and you have to wait a second for it to, or like half, a few milliseconds for it to open, there's a sleep command, so you can tell it like wait 200 milliseconds or something. Before you hit the arrow, before you hit whatever key, so that it's not hitting it too fast.
Okay, well that's good, because on my development machine, I actually have it's another keyboard like this with extra keys down the side, but I have them set for clean solution, rebuild solution, run solution, debug solution, and only one of those has a direct key, which is ironically F5. But
yeah.
So yeah, I live day and night in F5. But so I have those programmed to do Alt build menu, which is probably B, and then whatever it is as the key, the typey shortcut. So I just wanted to make sure that that was available in this as well.
You can even make it move a mouse. So you could even make it move a mouse pointer to
Oh, wow.
a particular coordinate on the screen,
Okay.
and then click that and move again or whatever. So it's like an invisible auto hotkey is an invisible hand is basically what it is. It's an invisible hand. So it could do a mouse movement, it could do a keyboard movement, all of that stuff. One thing I haven't tried to do with it, because for this kind of thing I probably would just write a plugin in Chrome, is have it specifically target something in the DOM menu, the DOM of a web page.
Sure.
Look for particular, button or div on a web page, and try to click that. I don't know if it can like read the DOM of read the HTML of a web page. I think if there was a way to get to that button on a web page by hitting the Alt key or by moving your mouse consistently to a particular spot, then you could do it that way. I'm not sure if it can do it by like, hey, look for this div. Thinking about what you said though, like this is a little off topic for our audience, but in our CMS, so it worked every week on Tom's Hardware using Tom's Hardware CMS that we have, there's a save button and there's no hotkey for that, right? And so I wrote a Chrome extension where there's that button when I hit Control Shift S. Right?
Sure.
So, I don't know if you could have necessarily do that with auto hotkey, because it's not, it's a button on the page, and so it would be hard to consistently hit. Maybe if you hit tab a certain number of times, but depending on where you were, it might vary. But for anything that's like in a Windows program, or a consistent menu, even like web tools like Google Docs, this will work perfectly.
Very cool. This is potentially going to change some stuff for me. So I'm super excited about this.
You could go down a really big rabbit hole with auto hotkey. It's been around for like at least 12 years, and it's a common open scripting language that people use. Gotcha.
And obviously I know you already said it, but you've got an article with all this information in it.
Yes, come to tomshardware.com and we already have up an article on how to use your numpad as a media player, macro pad, or mouse, that explains everything that I just showed.
Well, it was fun looking into it. Obviously, I didn't go deep down the rabbit hole with you yet. That is intended for this week. And I am definitely looking forward to that dive. And as always, Avram, I look forward to what we talk about next. This week's Extra Life on F5 Live is proudly powered by Loot Crate. Whether you're a gamer, anime fan, or pop culture aficionado, Loot Crate has a crate for you. They curate a bundle of collectibles, apparel, figures, and more that you can't find anywhere else, and they're delivered directly to your door. It's like getting an awesome birthday present from yourself every month. And you can learn more about the crates that are available and the deals that are going on by going to f5live.tv/lootcrate. So, okay, I think we all know at this point that possibly the most followed story in tech in the last year and a half, because it is fascinating, is the Epic Games versus Apple/Google thing. Obviously, they're mostly after Apple, but there's some animosity towards Google as well. But we're going to focus on the Google side of things tonight instead of Apple, which is where we usually are, because some interesting information came to light, care of one of these lawsuits. In an attempt to avoid this anti-competitive lawsuit from Epic, Google discussed internally trying to buy the company. So there are so many problems here. The first, of course, is the fact that Epic would have had no interest in this. If you have followed this even a little bit, you know that Tim Sweeney and his team have every intention of seeing this thing through. And so a buyout from Google would not have been on their radar. The second problem is, though not the first time a company would have bought another company in an attempt to avoid an antitrust lawsuit or an anti-competitive lawsuit, Google's under a lot of scrutiny right now. Would this have gotten through, or would it have merely upped the ante on nearly every government in the Western world investigating Google's business practices? All of that is probably why it didn't get very far, because Tim Sweeney says, we never heard anything about this until we got the document from the court. So it obviously didn't get too far because they didn't talk with Epic and nothing leaked out about the discussions. So there couldn't have been a lot of people involved. But what an interesting approach.
So I don't know. Is Epic a public company?
I don't know, because I know they have major investments from some other companies. Let's look. Why Epic Games isn't publicly traded? Plans to stay private. So no.
So, I mean, don't they have to find someone who wants to sell it to them?
Right.
I'm sure Google has enough money, if it were public, to just buy, well, provided that they're institutional investors that want to sell or whatever. But you can't. I mean, they have to find someone who wants to sell, right? I mean,
yeah. They would have had to have convinced Epic to sell, which is so unlikely.
That's a weird. I mean, look. I mean, I don't totally. I don't pretend to totally understand what motivates companies to buy or sell themselves. Like, I mean, not to buy to sell themselves. I mean, some companies seem to really have investors that just want to get out or whatever, so they're happy to they want their money and to be swallowed by a bigger company. Others, they want to be a player. So I mean, it seems like Epic is a company that wants to be a player. Like,
yeah,
because
they keep challenging everybody on every front. Like every time we turn around, they're going, "Hey, Steam, Epic Game Store," right? Like, I mean, they challenge everybody at every turn.
It's amazing that there are a few companies in the past several years where you would think, oh, a larger company could have come in and swallowed them, but I guess they wanted to stay independent because, like, for example, Netflix. Now Netflix is so big, Netflix can swallow other companies. But
true,
when Netflix was coming up, it was a small company, and it disrupted. It majorly disrupted. Companies that were bigger than it.
Blockbuster is gone.
Yeah, Blockbuster is gone, but also, its streaming model, right? I mean, Microsoft, can't. I mean, Apple is a competitor now, but I mean, I think a lot of companies are, and would be envious of Netflix's market position and haven't
Absolutely.
been able to achieve it, right? And they managed to achieve it, and at certain points they were a smaller company, and someone could have come along and say, hey, we want to buy you. And I assume that the people running Netflix probably turned down some offers, or were determined like, hey,
One
we
from
want to be
Blockbuster.
independent. Right. So, and who knows what would have happened if Blockbuster bought Netflix? Would it have just become? Would it have just gone down with the ship, or would it have transformed the company?
Right.
Hard to say.
Well, I can tell you based on talking to some of the people who were executives at Radio Shack while working with the Blockbuster deal. There was nothing that was going to reshape that company.
Right. I mean,
they were bullheaded.
Right. I mean, that kind of thing happens, right? So, yeah. So if you look at it, I can't imagine how Google, unless they had some way of having a hostile takeover, and then if they have a hostile takeover, like what? Again, they're going to face some government regulation here because they're, they definitely, by owning this game company, are kind of taking up the market. So there's a question of antitrust there.
Right.
So yeah,
and a game company that's
not good for them anyway.
And a game company that so famously sued them, claiming anti-competitive behavior, looking like, and based on this, not just looking like, actually trying to silence that loud voice by buying them out of the market. That's, none of that I can imagine would have looked good for the company.
Right. Exactly. So, all told, this was never going to happen.
No.
But was a bad idea. Whoever at Google thought of it.
Yeah. But, they say there are no bad ideas in brainstorming. That's not entirely always true, because some of them can get you into deeper legal trouble, like this one almost certainly would have.
Yes.
But I imagine Apple would have been happy if Google could have silenced Epic. It definitely sounds like we're talking about the mafia families in New York.
But wait a second.
There's more.
It's not clear to me that if Google had bought them, let's say they bought them and it went through, that Epic would drop its lawsuit against Apple. Why would Google want them to?
Well, because Apple is the loudest one championing, hard word to say, the business model that they want.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is like, yeah, I mean, but it hurts Apple more than it hurts Google. And besides, if they own Epic, they still have the same problem, don't they? Like, they still want to be in Apple's store.
Yeah, and they still want to be able to distribute.
Right. I mean, presuming that they actually want Epic to be a successful company, right?
Sure, and not just a victim of silencing.
Yes, assuming, I mean, it's a valuable asset. So, I mean, granted, Motorola was a valuable asset at the point that Google bought them too. So who knows?
Yeah, true enough. Oh, poor Motorola. Obviously, like you said, there was a 0% chance that this was going to happen for so many reasons. But it is definitely fun to muse on what they could have possibly been thinking. This week's news from the tubes and F5 Live is proudly powered by Malwarebytes. Whether you use a PC, a Mac, or a mobile device, Malwarebytes Premium is the company's strongest protection ever. It fights threats that traditional antivirus software can't stop, like worms, rogues, dialers, trojans, and a whole lot more. And you can use your computer and mobile device with confidence and peace of mind. To learn more and to get a special price, you can go to f5live.tv/malwarebytes. It was a while ago that Facebook, all capital Facebook, the company, announced their intentions to fully integrate all of the messaging systems that the company owns, including Facebook, all lowercase, Messenger, Instagram messaging, WhatsApp. Those three in particular, the intention was to create one messaging system that would go between them. One of the things that we talked about when that announcement was made was our belief that the likelihood that Facebook would complete the transition was low because the idea of encrypting all messaging, calls, video, text, seemed unlikely because Facebook is a big fan of seeing what's happening on its network, right? And so we were a little skeptical that it would go through. It turns out we were wrong. Last year, they implemented encryption, end-to-end encryption on text messages across all three platforms. And this week, they have added end-to-end encryption across all voice and video calls as well. So basically, all communications across Facebook are encrypted. Hold your horses on getting too excited, because the encryption keys are server generated, which means they're stored somewhere and are therefore decryptable by Facebook themselves. So the idea of being able to circumvent law enforcement by using Facebook Messenger, probably not going to happen. So it's actually an interesting middle ground, right? Between the privacy that encryption provides from the possibility of somebody hacking into Facebook, into their messenger system, and being able to access the messages. Well, all the messages are encrypted. If you get that database, it's not all that valuable. So there's security and privacy there. And then on the other hand, there's all the concerns that law enforcement, that, you know, you and I, Avram, we've talked about a lot over the last couple of years. There's been a big campaign for backdoors into encryption. This is Facebook saying you don't really need a backdoor. There are other ways for law enforcement to get it and to provide the privacy and protection. It's an interesting middle ground idea.
I mean, it is a backdoor. It's just it is a backdoor. It's just that it's not built as a backdoor. They hold the key, right? So first of all, I wouldn't necessarily trust that to be. I mean, we don't know who. I mean, forget about turning it over to law enforcement. We don't know if someone who at Facebook has access to those keys.
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
Or how secure the keys are. Couldn't somebody possibly hack into Facebook servers, get the keys?
Absolutely. And we in our article on the website, we actually have some quotes from an encryption specialist in a Q&A that was done before all this, talking exactly about that particular problem. The idea of there being a central store for keys. Yes, that makes the hacking process far harder, right? Because now you've got to hack into two, hopefully, separate systems, and that the keys aren't just being stored in the same database. But it does still leave open the ability for a nefarious actor, either internally or externally, to get access to everything and get a hold of it.
Also, you'd have to be the uncoolest crook in the world to use Facebook Messenger as your burner. You know, must be
True.
I mean, like, I don't know. I just can't imagine I mean, did you ever see The Wire?
No.
So great show. A lot of people love it. When The Wire was made, um, I guess they were primarily like getting wiretaps on actual phones and phone booths and things like that. Maybe at some point in the show that they were using cell phones or people were using burners or whatever. Of course, now you would probably want to get taps on, I don't know what you'd call it. I don't know if you'd call it a wire, to get taps on people's messengers or whatever. But I cannot possibly see like Stringer Bell conducting, for those who watch The Wire, conducting business over Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just so uncool to be like using. I mean, it's not what the cool kids use, right?
Sure. Right.
It's not what the cool hackers use either. Like,
No, you're going to be on tour.
Really? Right.
For sure. You're going to be on tour.
There's going to be, I mean, what would you use for messaging on tour, though?
There's a dozen.
Messaging?
There's a dozen or so messaging services on tour.
Yeah. So you have to be a pretty weak crook to be using, pretty tech unsavvy to be using Facebook anyway.
Especially because other than Google, if you were to survey people out in the wild and say, who is tracking you the most? The answer would be Facebook.
Right. You're going to trust Facebook with your data there? I mean, that's not very wise. I also, would really question, of course, have they promised not to look at it?
No.
Right? That too, right? I mean, one of the most shocking things that I read about in the last few years is that whole story with Alexa, right? And how Amazon actually has people who go and listen to recordings of what you've said at home on Alexa. Mm-hmm. And I think Google probably has it too with Assistant, and that they actually found ones that they found interesting, and they would like email it to each other.
Uh-huh.
So I find that really, really upsetting. Now, Granted, they never said they wouldn't. Amazon never said they wouldn't do it, right? So
Avram, your sound may have just stopped. There we go.
I think I hit spacebar by accident. I was so excited I went like this and I hit spacebar. Anyway, if Facebook hasn't promised not to read your conversations, the fact that it's encrypted only means that people at Facebook can get your conversation.
Right. Exactly. And that's why obviously the excitement around this, it's about as exciting as when there was somebody released a certificate that worked on AOL Instant Messenger in like the late 90s or early 2000s. And so people were using it because it put a little lock next to your name in the messenger. And they're like, oh, look, my conversations are encrypted. But are they though? Because everybody's using the same certificate. So I could decrypt every conversation that's behind that stupid little lock. That's the same situation here. Yeah. Is it encrypted? Yeah. How encrypted is it? Because Andrew Byrne, Byrne, who is policy manager at Facebook Ireland, said that encryption will not prevent content from being able to be reported by people to Facebook or by Facebook to law enforcement if policy community standards are violated or laws are broken. And in fact said, encryption is just one of the tools we use to fight abuse. So yeah, Facebook is absolutely not saying they're not going to look. And in fact, they're saying almost This almost sounds like he's saying it's a ploy.
Right.
So, yeah, it's not as exciting as it sounds, but the idea of at least, we've had certain bits of information either leak by Facebook or get access by third parties and stored. We all remember the Cambridge Analytica story from a couple of years ago. So at least with this, if they're encrypting stuff, even if the keys are server generated and stored inside of Facebook, so long as there's not an API to access those keys externally, then at least there is some level of privacy and protection from the outside world, just not from Facebook itself. So, it's a little better, but it's not as exciting as they're hoping you think it sounds. This week's DRM Not Included on F5 Live is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. You get your free shipping, but you get a whole lot more, including free music with Amazon Prime Music, free TV, movies, and documentaries with Amazon Prime Video, free games, and a free Twitch subscription with Amazon Prime Gaming, and of course, a whole lot more. And we've got links to all of those features and some of our other favorites, plus a 30-day free trial if you're not already a member, and all of that is available by going to f5live.tv/prime. All right, so talking of privacy and security, we know that VPNs are a big part of kind of everyday life these days. A lot of people use them as just like part of who they are. it's always on. They're always using it. I have several devices that are that way myself. Obviously, we use pure VPN. But you may have noticed during our pure VPN promo that I actually changed the wording a little bit this week, because you can say goodbye to some regional restrictions, because Netflix is infamous for paying attention to VPN IP addresses, particularly ones that are crossing borders, and banning IP addresses and whole subnets. Now, when I say ban, what they started doing in 2015 and what they do today are different. If it's part of that subnet, what they'll do is they'll block the regionally locked content, but VPN IP addresses tend to be in subnets in groups of their own. But recently, the VPNs have been taking an interesting tack, and they've been leasing from others blocks of IP addresses. And so, let's say you've got a VPN and you're in the United States and you try to use an IP address in Australia. After a while, it'll stop working because Netflix will catch on. And you won't get the Australian content anymore. However, because they're leasing these IP addresses from others, Netflix has been blocking what are, in reality, residential consumer IP addresses. So when that lease is up for a couple of weeks, let's say PureVPN leases a block of IP addresses from Spectrum, for a couple of weeks until they're blocked. When they return those to Spectrum, they're still blocked. Netflix still recognizes them as VPN IP addresses, and people are starting to notice content disappearing because of this, which is obviously not great. This has been a weird game of cat and mouse for a lot of years, and it seems to have caught up with Netflix, because now you sitting at home, let's say there's a power failure, your modem comes back on, and all of a sudden you can't watch regionally things that are US based. Just whoop, all of a sudden. That's not a great look for Netflix, because they're essentially treating you as if you're a criminal, like you're doing something wrong, when you have done nothing wrong but had your modem reboot.
So here's something I don't understand,
Sure.
and I've never understood this about the regional how they enforce the regional restrictions.
Hmm.
Why do they even let you view this other country as this other country if they know your account is based in the US? Like,
Right.
they know where I live, right? I mean, Netflix knows where I live. They
They
know I'm a
certainly know where your
US,
billing address is.
right? They know I'm a US person, right? Like I'm a US resident. So why isn't it just that whenever I log in, they give me the US content, and if I attempt to log in from an IP address outside the US, they say no. They either say you're in a non. They either kick me out, or they give me the US stuff. Um, Now, I guess you could argue, and I don't even know if how this if this is in Netflix's like terms and conditions, but like if I'm on vacation, let's say I'm on vacation and
Hmm.
I go to England on vacation
Yes.
and I'm in my hotel room and I try to access Netflix from in there, is it okay with Netflix if I watch British Netflix when I'm in England, even
Yes.
though I have a US account?
Yes. I
Okay,
can tell
so
you, I can tell you, at least from Hulu's perspective, absolutely. When we were in Canada, there were shows that we were missing, including we were there for the series finale of Game of Thrones, and Danny wasn't able to watch it on her Hulu with Live because we were in Canada and it didn't count because they didn't have the
right,
rights to it there. But there were shows that we had never heard of. Something I don't remember, something with the word boy in it. I don't remember what it was, but it looked interesting, and we'd never heard of it. And in the early days of our pure VPN relationship, I used to use that as our example because we were in Canada and wanted to report that we were in the United States.
right. So it seems I don't know. It seems to me like what they should do is they should just say like you're a US customer.
Hmm.
You're on a US plan. You get the US content.
Agreed.
Period. Then that would solve this problem, wouldn't it? I mean, what's the problem? Or is it that they're worried that people in like the UK in the US will get a UK will somehow get the password for a UK plan and get on that way? Then what they could do is they could do both. They could say like, look, if you can't log on if you're outside the country, right? If you're outside of your home country, you can't log into Netflix, right?
Or
When
or
you're
maybe or maybe if you're outside your region, if you report
yeah,
outside your region, you just only get the non-region locked content, which
right,
is what they're doing for offending like long-term offending IP addresses, which is the problem here, right?
right,
That could just be the default. If you're outside your billing address is in the United States, your IP address is the United States, you get all the US stuff. If your billing address is the United
yes,
States and your IP address is Canada, you get just the stuff that is the combination in the middle part of the Venn diagram of the United States and
right,
Canada.
right, or something like that, right? I mean, why can't they just solve it that way? Why do they have to take? I mean, why do they have to take the blunt move of like of banning IP addresses?
Yeah.
That seems very counterintuitive. Why don't they just use the intelligence they have about your address? It makes no sense to me.
I am 100% in agreement. The whole policy has been so weird. There have been so many complaints since 2015 when this started, and obviously now that they're actually starting to nerf uh, residential IP addresses, this is not going to get better. The good news is, and I know this isn't for everybody, but our audience is generally a techier one. If it happens, go to your modem, release and renew your IP address, and generally that will help. But you could get back onto another nerfed IP address. But at least there's a chance of being able to fix it right now while while Netflix starts to bear the brunt of the negative backlash. But definitely report it when it happens. Definitely complain about it. They need to know.
Whom?
To Netflix.
To whom? Oh.
Yeah, get into their support system, tweet at them publicly, something. I personally, in a case like this where their policies are creating a bad experience for the users, I think public shaming is a perfectly acceptable way of handling it. If anybody followed my my attack on the, let's call them a bank current, you know that I'm perfectly okay with public shaming. When I definitely did some damage to them, but yeah, I definitely let them know, but then also know that a release and a renew for a lot of people has been helping solve the problem, because the next IP address may not be nerfed.
Yep, and then after you get your connection back, watch Beckett, because that was a pretty good movie.
I love how you work in movie recommendations into the topics.
Gotta spread the word. New Netflix movie, Beckett. A lot of critics didn't like it. It's a good movie. You should watch it anyway.
Okay. We have very infrequently gone wrong on your recommendations, so it will go on my list.
Okay.
I still cannot stomach Discovery, but that's a whole different topic. Anyway, there are solutions to the problem. They're not great right now, but if Netflix hears enough from consumers, they will have to address it. And Netflix, we just gave you a solution that I think would help alleviate this issue. So I'm not even going to charge a commission on it.
That would, however, really hurt the VPN industry a little bit.
It would, because there's a lot of people who are using it for that. It's literally part of our promo.
Yep. Sorry,
but no, absolutely, it would hurt the VPN industry. Although there's a lot of other reasons to be using a VPN, because you probably shouldn't trust your ISP either. Anyway, that's our show. Thank you to those of you who joined us live. We always appreciate our live listeners and viewers. If you didn't and would like to in the future, PLUGHITZlive.com. That'll do it too. PLUGHITZlive.com/join us Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can join us and chat with us. Give us your ideas on how Netflix could solve this problem. Maybe our idea is not the best. Maybe you've got a better one. You can also let us know on social media. We'd love to hear from you if you've got a great idea. If you can't join us live, that's okay. PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe will take you to our subscription page, where you'll see everything, including all of our shows, all the ways to watch, listen, and follow along. Plus, in the coming days, the link to subscribe to the monthly download, which will be our new in-depth newsletter we're really excited about. That will show up on that page as well. And so, with that, on behalf of the staff that's not here, I'm Scott.
I'm Avram.
And we'll see you back next time. Ciao. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of F5 Live Refreshing Technology. If you did, please subscribe to the channel down below, and of course hit the notification bell, because we know that subscriptions don't mean much on YouTube anymore. If you've got topics that you'd like us to talk about in the future, please comment them down below. And if you'd like to not follow us on YouTube, there's lots of ways that you can follow along with our content by going to PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all of the ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along.